Elena Vasquez counted her last $38 while rain hammered against her farmhouse windows. Her German shepherd, Luna, discovered a metal hatch hidden beneath the cornfield. What they found underneath would expose a truth that powerful people had buried for decades. For months before Elena found the hatch, she sat alone in her kitchen, sorting pills she could no longer afford. The medical bills covered the table like accusations: her mother's cancer treatment, her daughter's asthma medication, the mortgage payment she'd already missed twice. The farm in rural Nebraska, 215 acres that had belonged to the Vasquez family since 1952, was slipping through her fingers like water through a broken dam. Elena was 39 years old, a widow, and a single mother to 7-year-old Sophia. Her husband, Miguel, had died 3 years earlier in what the county coroner ruled an unfortunate farming accident. But Elena had never believed it. Miguel was too careful, too experienced. Tractors didn't just flip on level ground. Not unless something was wrong with the land itself. The drought hadn't helped. For 2 seasons, the corn had grown stunted and yellow, the soybeans refused to thrive, and the cattle kept getting sick with mysterious ailments the veterinarian couldn't explain. The soil itself seemed cursed. Elena had sent samples to the Agricultural Extension Office twice, but both times they'd come back with vague reports saying everything was within acceptable parameters. Luna, the German shepherd Miguel had brought home as a puppy 6 months before he died, was Elena's constant shadow. The dog seemed to sense Elena's desperation, staying close, watching Sophia with protective intensity that bordered on obsessive. That October morning, Elena was walking the northern boundary of her property, trying to decide which section to sell first to keep the bank at bay. Luna ranged ahead, nose to the ground, working through the dried corn stalks with methodical precision. Then the dog stopped. Her ears shot forward, and she began digging frantically at a spot near the old irrigation ditch that hadn't held water in 2 years. "Luna, stop," Elena called, but the dog ignored her, pawing deeper into the hard-packed earth with single-minded determination. Elena walked over, ready to pull the dog away, and that's when she saw it. The edge of something metal, dark green beneath the rust, clearly not natural. Her heart began to pound. She ran back to her truck and grabbed a shovel. For the next 40 minutes, she dug, sweat soaking through her shirt despite the cool autumn air. Luna sat nearby, watching with unusual stillness, as if she understood the significance of what they'd found. The hatch was circular, about 5 feet in diameter, with a locking wheel in the center that looked military surplus. Stenciled letters, faded but still visible, read, "Authorized personnel only, Site 12. Elena's hands trembled as she gripped the wheel. It fought her at first, frozen by years of disuse. But she was a farmer. She knew about leverage and persistence. Slowly, with a metallic groan that seemed to echo across the empty field, the wheel turned. When the seal broke, a rush of cold air escaped, carrying a chemical smell that made Elena's eyes water. Luna backed away immediately, a low growl rumbling in her chest, a sound Elena had only heard once before, the night before Miguel died. Elena grabbed her flashlight from the truck. Her daughter Sophia was at school, safe. Whatever this was, Elena needed to see it before anyone else did. The ladder descended 25 feet into darkness. Each rung was slick with condensation. Elena's boots finally hit concrete, and she swept the flashlight beam around in a slow arc. She was standing in an underground facility. The space was enormous, at least 50 feet long and 30 feet wide, with walls of reinforced concrete that looked thick enough to survive a bomb blast. Industrial fluorescent lights hung dead from the ceiling. Along the left wall stood rows of filing cabinets, at least 20 of them. Along the right wall, she saw laboratory equipment, beakers, microscopes, centrifuges, things she recognized from Sophia's science textbooks, but on a much larger, more sophisticated scale. And in the center of the room sat a large steel desk covered in papers held down by a coffee mug with the logo, Titan Chemical Industries. Elena approached the desk slowly, her flashlight beam illuminating decades of dust. The papers were yellowed but perfectly preserved in the sealed environment. She picked up the first document, and her blood went cold. Confidential, long-term agricultural contamination study, Nebraska Test Site 12, 1953 to 1988. The document outlined a program she could barely comprehend. Titan Chemical Industries, one of the largest agricultural corporations in America, had been conducting unauthorized experiments on farmland across Nebraska for 35 years. They deliberately introduced experimental pesticides, buried chemical waste, contaminated groundwater, all to study long-term effects on crops, livestock, and human populations. And they'd paid local officials to ensure no one ever found out. Elena tore through the filing cabinets with shaking hands. Each drawer revealed another layer of horror. There were maps showing 15 farms in the county marked as active test sites. There were medical studies tracking cancer rates, birth defects, and mysterious illnesses in families who lived on the contaminated land. There were financial ledgers showing payments to dozens of people, county commissioners, state agriculture inspectors, the county health director, even the local hospital administrator. Then Elena found the file labeled Property 7, Vasquez Farm, Parcel 445. Her vision blurred as she read. Her property had been an active test site since 1953. Her grandfather, who died of liver failure in 1967. Her aunt, who'd lost 3 pregnancies in the 1970s. Her father, who developed a rare neurological disease in the 1980s. Miguel's tractor accident in 1982. The report noted unexpected soil density failure in Field 7 due to subsurface chemical degradation. They'd killed Miguel. Not directly, but they'd poisoned the land until it collapsed beneath him. And Sophia's asthma, the respiratory problems she'd suffered since birth. Elena found a medical report dated 6 months after Sophia was born, noting elevated rates of childhood respiratory illness in families residing on Site 12, consistent with projected outcomes. They'd known. Titan Chemical had known her daughter would be sick, had predicted it, had watched it happen as part of their decades-long experiment. Elena's hands shook so violently she could barely hold the papers. Rage burned through her chest, hot and sharp as broken glass. She found a canvas bag beneath the desk and began stuffing documents inside. Contamination reports, payment ledgers, medical studies, internal memos discussing acceptable casualty rates, and litigation risk management. She took photographs of everything she couldn't carry. She was halfway up the ladder, the bag slung over her shoulder, when she heard a vehicle approaching above ground. Luna's bark was urgent, aggressive, the warning bark she used for genuine threats. Elena climbed faster, emerging into daylight just as a dark blue SUV pulled up beside her truck. 2 men stepped out. One was tall and thin, wearing an expensive suit that looked absurd against the backdrop of dead cornstalks. The other was shorter, muscular, with the hard eyes of someone accustomed to violence. Mrs. Vasquez, the tall one called out, his voice smooth and practiced. My name is Richard Kemper. I represent Titan Chemical Industries. I believe you've discovered some property that belongs to us. Elena stood her ground, the canvas bag heavy against her side. This is my land. Everything on it belongs to me. The land, yes, Kemper agreed, walking closer with his hands visible, palms out, a gesture meant to look non-threatening, but somehow making Elena's instincts scream danger. But the research facility and its contents are company property, proprietary information, trade secrets. You understand. I understand you've been poisoning my family for 40 years, Elena said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. I understand my husband is dead because of you. I understand my daughter can barely breathe because you used us as lab rats. Kemper's pleasant expression never wavered. Those are serious allegations, Mrs. Vasquez. Allegations that could lead to very expensive legal battles. Battles you can't afford. He paused, letting that sink in. But we're reasonable people. We'd like to make this right. $100,000 for those documents. Cash. No taxes, no questions. You could pay off your farm, get your daughter the best medical care available, start fresh. $100,000. It was an impossible sum. It would solve everything. The mortgage, the medical bills, Sophia's future. But Elena thought about Miguel, about the lies she'd been told about his death. She thought about her mother, who died of cancer at 53. She thought about Sophia, wheezing through another sleepless night despite the medications that barely helped. No, Elena said. The pleasant expression slipped from Kemper's face like a mask removed. Mrs. Vasquez, you're making a mistake. Those documents are stolen property. We could have you arrested right now. Then call the sheriff, Elena said. I'm sure Martin Foster would love to help you out, especially since he's been taking $20,000 a year from Titan Chemical since 1976. It's all documented. Kemper's eyes narrowed. You read the files. Every word. The shorter man moved his hand toward his jacket. Luna's growl deepened, and Elena saw the dog's muscles bunch, ready to attack. Careful, Elena said quietly. Luna doesn't like sudden movements. Kemper raised a hand, and his companion froze. Mrs. Vasquez, you need to understand the situation. Those documents represent 35 years of research. Billions of dollars in intellectual property. Titan Chemical will protect its interests. With lawyers, certainly, but also with other methods, if necessary. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Kemper's voice had gone flat, emotionless. You have until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to return those documents and sign a non-disclosure agreement. After that, we'll pursue all available remedies. And I mean all of them. Your daughter, Sophia, she attends Lincoln Elementary School, correct? Third grade class with Mrs. Peterson. Ice flooded Elena's veins. If you go anywhere near my daughter, we won't have to. Kemper interrupted. That's the point. Cooperate, take the money, and everyone stays safe. Make trouble, and accidents happen. You know how accidents happen, Mrs. Vasquez. Your husband certainly did. He walked back to the SUV, and both men drove away, leaving Elena standing beside the open hatch with Luna pressed against her leg and a bag full of evidence that could get her and Sophia killed. That night, Elena couldn't eat. She sat at her kitchen table after putting Sophia to bed, reading through the documents again and again, trying to find something, anything, that could protect them. She found it in a file labeled Internal Dissent, Personnel Actions. In 1981, a Titan chemical scientist named Dr. Patricia Reeves had raised concerns about the ethics of the contamination studies. She'd written memos arguing that the company was violating federal law and basic human decency. Titan had responded by destroying her career. She'd been fired, blacklisted in the industry, her reputation systematically demolished. But according to the final memo in the file, Dr. Reeves had kept copies of her research. She tried to contact the EPA, but her complaints had been buried by officials on Titan's payroll. Eventually, she'd given up and disappeared. Elena spent 2 hours searching online, using her slow dial-up internet connection. Finally, she found a reference. Dr. Patricia Reeves was living in Colorado, working as a high school science teacher under her married name, Patricia Mitchell. Elena called information, got the number, and dialed before she could lose her courage. The phone rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered. Hello, Dr. Reeves? My name is Elena Vasquez. I found something buried on my farm in Nebraska. Something I think you tried to expose 12 years ago. There was a long, heavy silence. Then, what did you find? Site 12. The contamination study. All the files. Payment records, medical reports, everything. Elena heard sharp intake of breath. Dear God, where are you? Custer County, Nebraska. My family's farm. Have they contacted you yet? This afternoon. They threatened my daughter. Then you're in immediate danger, Dr. Reeves said, her voice urgent. Real danger. Titan doesn't make idle threats. When I tried to expose them, they destroyed my career. But you have something I never did, physical evidence. That changes everything. What do I do? Elena asked, hearing the desperation in her own voice. Don't go to local police. They're compromised. Don't trust anyone in county government. You need federal protection. I have a contact at the EPA's Criminal Investigation Division, someone who can't be bought. His name is Agent David Park. I'll call him tonight, explain the situation. Can you get to Denver? That's 8 hours away. Can you do it safely? Without being followed. Elena looked at Luna, who was watching her with those intelligent brown eyes. I'll find a way. Bring everything. Every document, every photograph. And Mrs. Vasquez, once you do this, there's no going back. Titan will come after you with everything they have. Lawyers, private investigators, maybe worse. You need to be absolutely certain. Elena thought about Miguel's grave, about Sophia's inhaler, about the 15 other families marked on Titan's maps. I'm certain. Then meet me at the federal building in Denver tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll bring Agent Park. We'll protect you and your daughter, and we'll finally make these bastards pay for what they've done. Elena hung up and immediately began preparing. She made copies of the documents at a 24-hour print shop in the next county, hiding the originals in 3 separate locations. One buried in her barn, one with her lawyer in Lincoln, one in a safety deposit box at a bank 3 counties away. Then she called her sister in Iowa and arranged for Sophia to stay there, out of Titan's reach. At dawn, Sheriff Martin Foster pulled into her driveway. Foster was in his late 50s, with iron-gray hair and a face lined by years of looking the other way. He stepped out of his patrol car slowly, deliberately, his hand resting on his gun. "Elena," he said, his voice carrying false warmth. "Heard you had some visitors yesterday. Heard you've been making some wild accusations." "Not accusations," Elena said. "Facts. Documented facts." Foster's expression hardened. "Now, you need to understand something. Titan Chemical employs 200 people in this county. They're the largest taxpayer. They support schools, hospitals, little league teams. You go around spreading lies about them. You're not just hurting the company, you're hurting everyone. They killed my husband. Miguel's death was an accident. You saw the report. Written by a coroner on Titan's payroll." Elena's voice was steel. "It's all documented, Martin. Every payment, including yours." Foster's jaw tightened. For just a moment, she saw something that might have been shame flicker across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. "You're going to give those documents back," Foster said quietly. "You're going to take Titan's generous offer, and you're going to keep your mouth shut. Because if you don't, I can't protect you from what happens next. And I'm not talking about lawsuits." "Is that a threat, Sheriff?" "It's a promise. There are 15 families on those maps. 15 families who might start asking questions if you start making noise. Titan can't allow that. They'll do whatever it takes to protect their interests. Whatever it takes. You understand what I'm saying?" Elena met his eyes. "I understand you've been taking bribes for 20 years while people died. I understand you're complicit in murder. And I understand that when Agent David Park from the EPA's Criminal Investigation Division sees these files, you're going to prison." Foster's face went pale. "You called the feds?" "I called everyone who matters. And by this time tomorrow, the whole truth will be public." Foster stared at her for a long moment, and Elena saw the calculation happening behind his eyes, saw him weighing his options, his future, his freedom. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then God help you, Elena. Because I can't." He drove away, and Elena stood in her driveway watching the sun rise over fields that had been poisoned for 40 years, knowing that everything was about to change, and that the most dangerous part of her journey was just beginning. Elena Vasquez discovered an underground bunker on her Nebraska farm containing evidence that Titan Chemical Industries had been deliberately poisoning farmland for 40 years. After rejecting their bribe and facing threats against her daughter Sophia, Elena contacted Dr. Patricia Reeves, a former Titan scientist who tried to expose the company years earlier. Now, with federal agent David Park ready to help, Elena must get the evidence to Denver before Titan can stop her permanently. Elena left her farmhouse at 4 a.m., while darkness still blanketed the Nebraska plains. Sophia was safe with her sister in Iowa, 300 miles away. Luna sat in the passenger seat of her aging pickup truck, alert and watchful. The canvas bag containing copies of the documents rested between them like a loaded weapon. She'd expected pursuit. What she hadn't expected was how quickly it would come. 20 miles outside of town, headlights appeared in her rearview mirror. 2 vehicles, moving fast, closing the distance with predatory intent. Elena's heart hammered as she pressed the accelerator, but her 15-year-old truck couldn't match their speed. The first vehicle, a black SUV, pulled alongside her on the empty highway. Through the tinted windows, she could see the driver gesturing for her to pull over. When she didn't, the SUV swerved toward her, forcing her toward the shoulder. Luna growled, her hackles rising. Elena fought the wheel, keeping the truck steady. The SUV struck her bumper once, hard enough to make the whole vehicle shudder. She was running out of road. In another mile, the highway narrowed to a single lane with steep ditches on both sides. Then salvation appeared in the form of another vehicle coming from the opposite direction, a semi-truck hauling grain, its lights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. The SUV had to fall back or risk a head-on collision. Elena seized the moment. She spotted a county road ahead and yanked the wheel hard right, sending the truck skidding onto gravel. The SUV overshot the turn, brake lights flaring as it tried to reverse. Elena didn't wait. She gunned the engine, racing down the narrow county road with dust billowing behind her. The road twisted through farmland she'd known since childhood. She took turn after turn, using every shortcut and back road she could remember, finally losing her pursuers in a maze of rural routes that didn't appear on any GPS. By the time the sun rose, she was 50 miles away, pulling into a truck stop to catch her breath. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Luna pressed against her side, whining softly. Elena pulled out the burner phone she'd bought the night before and called Dr. Reeves. "They tried to run me off the road," Elena said without preamble. "Are you hurt?" Dr. Reeves's voice was tight with concern. "No, but they're not playing games anymore. Neither are we. Agent Park has assembled a team. Federal marshals are standing by. Can you make it to Denver?" Elena looked at the map spread across her dashboard. "I'm about 6 hours out, but they'll be watching the main routes. Then take back roads. Stay off the interstate. Call me every hour so we know you're safe." Elena hung up and bought coffee and a breakfast sandwich she couldn't eat. While Luna ate kibble from a bowl in the truck bed, Elena studied the map, plotting a route that avoided major highways. She was pulling back onto the road when her regular phone rang. The screen showed Custer County Hospital. Elena's blood turned to ice. Sophia was supposed to be safe in Iowa. Unless... "Hello? Mrs. Vasquez?" The voice was unfamiliar, female, professional. "This is Linda Morrison from Custer County Hospital. Your daughter Sophia was brought in this morning with severe respiratory distress. She's stable now, but the doctors would like you to come in immediately." Elena's world tilted. "That's impossible. Sophia isn't in Custer County." A pause. "According to our records, she was brought in by your sister, Margaret Chun, about an hour ago." Margaret Chun. That was the name Elena had used when calling Dr. Reeves, a fake name to protect her real sister. This wasn't the hospital. This was Titan. "Tell Richard Kemper," Elena said quietly, "that if he touches my daughter, there won't be a hole deep enough for him to hide in." She hung up and immediately called her sister. The phone rang twice before her sister answered, breathless. "Elena? Thank God. Sophia's fine. She's right here eating breakfast. But there've been 2 cars circling the block all morning. I think they're watching the house." Relief and rage roared in Elena's chest. "Pack a bag. Take Sophia to the police station and don't leave until I call you. I'll have federal agents there within the hour." She called Dr. Reeves back, explained the situation. Within minutes, Dr. Reeves confirmed that Agent Park was dispatching marshals to protect Sophia. But now Elena knew the truth. Titan would do anything to stop her. They'd threaten children. They'd impersonate hospitals. There were no rules anymore, no lines they wouldn't cross. She drove faster, taking roads that barely qualified as roads, dirt tracks through farmland, gravel paths that wound between properties. Luna kept watch, her eyes scanning constantly for threats. She was an hour from the Colorado border when she saw the roadblock. 2 sheriff's vehicles blocked the county road ahead, light bars flashing. Deputies stood beside them, watching approaching traffic. One of them had binoculars. Elena's heart sank. She couldn't turn around without drawing attention. She couldn't drive through, but she could go around. She turned onto a farm access road, praying it led somewhere useful. The road deteriorated to twin-tire ruts through a harvested wheat field. Her truck bounced and rattled, but it kept moving. Then she saw them. 3 more vehicles converging from different directions, kicking up dust as they raced across open farmland. They weren't even pretending to be law enforcement anymore. These were Titan's private security, and they were done being subtle. Elena pushed the accelerator to the floor. The truck's engine screamed in protest. Luna braced herself against the dashboard, ears flat. The vehicles were faster, newer, better equipped. They were going to catch her, unless she did something desperate. Ahead, Elena saw the border, a line of fence posts and a narrow creek marking where Nebraska ended and Colorado began. And beyond that, a paved highway where she could see the flashing lights of multiple law enforcement vehicles. Agent Park had sent backup, but the creek was too wide to cross safely, the banks too steep. Elena would have to find a bridge, and the nearest one was a mile away, a mile she didn't have. Luna barked sharply once. Elena made her decision. She aimed the truck at the narrowest part of the creek and accelerated. "Hold on, girl." The truck hit the water with a tremendous splash. The front end dipped, water spraying across the windshield. For a terrifying moment, Elena thought they'd get stuck. Then the rear wheels found purchase, and the truck clawed its way up the opposite bank, engine roaring, tires spitting mud. They crested the bank and burst onto Colorado soil just as the pursuing vehicles reached the creek behind them. Ahead, 6 federal vehicles blocked the highway. Agents in tactical gear stood ready, weapons drawn but pointed safely downward. Elena's truck skidded to a stop in the middle of the highway. She sat there, hands shaking so badly she could barely unbuckle her seatbelt. Luna licked her face, whining with concern. A woman approached, Asian American, late 50s, with steel-gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Dr. Patricia Reeves. Behind her stood a tall man in a suit with FBI credentials clipped to his belt. Agent David Park. Elena climbed out of the truck on trembling legs. Dr. Reeves reached her first, steadying her with strong hands. "You made it," Dr. Reeves said, and Elena heard decades of vindication in those 3 words. "I made it," Elena confirmed, pulling the canvas bag from the truck. Agent Park approached, his expression grim and determined. "Mrs. Vasquez, I'm Agent Park. You've had quite a morning." "They tried to use my daughter," Elena said, her voice breaking for the first time. "They threatened a 7-year-old girl. We know. Federal marshals have your sister and Sophia in protective custody. They're safe." Park gestured to the bag. "Are those the documents?" Elena handed them over, watching as Park opened the bag and began examining the contents. His expression darkened with each page he reviewed. "This is extensive," he said finally. "This is evidence of criminal conspiracy spanning 4 decades. Environmental crimes, bribery, possibly negligent homicide." He looked up at Elena. "You understand what you've just handed us? This is going to bring down one of the largest chemical companies in America." "Good," Elena said simply. Behind them, across the creek, the Titan security vehicles had stopped. The occupants stood beside their cars, watching but not crossing the state line. Not with federal agents watching. It was over. 3 months later, Elena stood in her farmhouse kitchen, watching the news on her small television. Sophia sat at the table doing homework, her breathing easier now thanks to new medications federal health services had provided. The news anchor's voice was crisp and professional. In breaking news, Titan Chemical Industries has filed for bankruptcy protection following federal indictments of 17 executives and the revelation of decades of illegal contamination testing. The EPA has designated 15 properties in Nebraska as Superfund sites, and Attorney General Park has announced criminal charges in connection with multiple deaths. Elena turned off the television. She'd heard enough. Outside, Luna barked at something in the yard, probably just a rabbit. The sound was normal, domestic, safe. The settlement money hadn't arrived yet, but it would. Enough to pay off the farm, fund Sophia's education, maybe help the other 14 families start to rebuild. But more importantly, the truth was out. Miguel's death hadn't been an accident. Her mother's cancer hadn't been random. The Vasquez family hadn't been cursed. They'd been poisoned, deliberately, by people who valued profit over human life. Now those people would face justice. Elena walked outside, where the metal hatch still lay open in the northern field. Soon, EPA crews would arrive to decontaminate the bunker and begin the long process of cleaning the soil. But tonight, Elena just stood there with Luna at her side, looking at the stars emerging in the darkening sky, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The truth had been buried for 40 years, but she'd brought it into the light. And that made all the difference.